folks, I want to discuss something that I have brought up on several occasions, and that is something is happening all around us right now. Things are changing quite rapidly. How many of you can tell that the seasons are a bit off? It seems as though the seasons are coming in later than expected. And when the seasons do change, it feels like an overnight transformation. The timing is off, should I say. Now, one should not expect the seasons to cycle through exactly the same every year, but up to this point, things are becoming strange. How many of you see not only changes in our environment, but are seeing changes in things that live in that environment? Plants, animals, people. How many of you are having unexplained symptoms? What symptoms am I referring to, you say? Well, we're going to get into that. And as the world turns and we progress further into the year, let us consider what happened last year. And let us not assume that everything has balanced itself out, because based on what we have seen so far this year, we may be in for a bit more chaos. There is an old saying, among one's affairs there should not be more than 2 or 3 matters of what one could call great concern. If these are deliberated upon during ordinary times, they can be understood. Thinking about things previously and then handling them lightly when the time comes is what this is all about. To face an event and solve it lightly is difficult if you are not resolved beforehand. And there will always be uncertainty in hitting your mark. However, if the foundation is laid previously, you can think of the saying, matters of great concern should be treated lightly, as your own basis for action. You see, noticing the small changes around us can help us to prepare for what those small things will turn into later, which are matters of great concern. And so if you are resolved from the very beginning, those matters of great concern are not so concerning, because you are prepared for them. Many people right now are looking for disclosure, but disclosure is happening. They're just not paying attention. You see, when NASA holds a press conference telling you all that some distant star has exploded, they are trying to tell you something, but nobody gets it. And because some people just tune out or dismiss it, the ones pulling the strings don't feel it effective to tell you anything more after that. They keep doing this, but people have little interest. There is a war going on right now, folks, between what is inside the earth and space. And we are smack dab in the middle of it. Let me give you an update on what is occurring on our planet. And I want to spend some time on this because I believe the in-depth information regarding this matter is essential to understanding what we are up against. So, there has been quite a bit of coverage on the Kilauea Volcano eruption. Folks, if this isn't a sign of what's coming, then I don't know what is. As much as some of you want to believe that this is somehow normal, it is not. And I'll tell you why in a moment. First, understand that God does not restrict us from inhabiting certain areas on the planet. The earth restricts us from those areas. And one of the most important methods of surviving this increasingly hazardous planet is having the ability to move around. Let me tell you something. Some people will die before they leave their homes where they have centuries of family history. This is how many ancient civilizations were wiped out. People standing there just watching the fire fall from the sky, a deer staring into the headlights. This is the Hawaiian Archipelago. It is comprised of 8 main islands, several dozen smaller islands or islets, many reefs, atolls, which are coral rims that surround a smaller body of water. This archipelago is basically one large volcano, protruding the surface of the ocean at different elevations. On a smaller scale, we can divide this up into a series of shield volcanoes, starting with the furthest northwestern Kilauea Atoll, which was once sitting on top of a magma hotspot. Now, the seabed, of course, is part of a tectonic plate that moves, but the hotspot does not. And so it has over many years bubbled up these islands in a southeastern direction all the way till we get to the youngest formation, the largest island of Hawaii. This island is made up of 5 volcanoes. One is extinct, one is dormant, and the other 3 are active. Of the 3 that are active, Kilauea is the one that won't quit. This volcano has been erupting since the early 80s and probably won't stop erupting for a very, very, very long time. I think people who live in these environments can become complacent and can easily forget that they are basically living on top of a volcano. Not really next to a volcano, on top of it. Now keep in mind that earlier this month, Mount Merapi erupted in Indonesia. It is estimated that 12,000 people lived in the immediate vicinity, which is strange because that same volcano killed 300 people when it erupted back in 2010. Remember back in January of this year, the entire population of Karovar in Papua New Guinea had to be evacuated by surprise because the lava from the volcano began to cover the entire island. Now you're probably thinking, there's no way that people were living on this thing. Yes, 591 people to be exact, and this chunk of land is literally just all volcano. Bali's Mount Agung erupted again in February, remember? Mount Sinabung in Indonesia also erupted February of this year, throwing ash 5,000 meters into the air. Mount Lo in Japan erupted in April this year. That volcano, although small in scale, has not erupted in 250 years. Are you with me so far? In March, there was a series of explosive eruptions at the Shinmoedake volcano in Kyushu, Japan. There was an explosion at the Cleveland volcano in Alaska earlier this month. Mount Mayon in the Philippines also erupted back in January of this year. You may have missed it, but there was an eruption at the Turrialba volcano in Costa Rica in February. Folks, I could keep going, but I just want you to take note of these events. Yes, it is not an uncommon thing for volcanoes to erupt, but I would say that this is quite a few volcanoes that have been reported erupting within the past 5 months. And there's more. Now in Hawaii, Kilauea has been flaring up due to earthquake activity. And as you know, earthquakes and volcanoes blend well together. So, simply put, the volcano is opening up these fissures. About 21 new fissures have opened up and lava is pooling out and starting to cover new ground. There are multiple issues with this. One, people have built structures, homes on this new ground. So far, over 2,000 acres have been covered in lava. 82 building structures have been destroyed, and another 37 structures have been isolated due to roads being cut off from the lava flow. Hundreds of people have been evacuated. Also, there is a threat to one of their major highways and a geothermal plant, which is the source of 30% of the electricity on the island. As of now, the lava is beginning to get very close and cover the wells at the plant. Aside from the ash, another problem here are the gases. The methane gases that are produced by everything burning up. Some footage shows the blue flames of methane burning in the streets. Some of the lava is flowing into the ocean. Now, lava and seawater don't mix well. And so now you have hydrochloric acid going into the air along with the sulfur dioxide that's already there. Also, just to spice things up a bit, it's also creating glass-like particles going into the air. This is going to be followed by volcanic fog and some pretty toxic and muddy acid rain. So why is this happening? Well, the pressure under the Earth's crust is of course increasing. And the magma, due to its magnetic properties, it seems as if it is being pulled to the surface. And so those areas on the planet that are vents or openings to release the pressure, or volcanoes, they are all now blowing their tops. See, the real problem with Kilauea is that people think that this event is isolated. It is not. This is happening all over, under the earth. It is everywhere. We went on alert with Yellowstone. Remember all the earthquake activity recently? This is not an isolated problem. What's happening in Hawaii seems to be happening all over. Antarctica is melting because of its increase in volcanic activity. Not global warming. Folks, there are volcanoes that by themselves put out more pollution than man has ever produced in his existence. Because you have to keep in mind that big industry and cars are not that old. Isn't it interesting, by the way, that they keep pushing the idea of the ice melting in Antarctica as somehow man's fault? I recall them trying to sell us this idea about the Arctic with the stranded polar bear, remember? Oh, poor guy. He's stuck on a little slab of ice. When polar bears actually spend most of their time swimming. I just assume that this is because very few people will be able to go there and see what is actually causing the ice to melt. Most people don't care anyway. It's true. And that is another problem. So now the question is, what is causing this change in the flow of magma? Why is it trying to get out? Why is it trying to escape or force its way to the surface? Now, it's not unreasonable to theorize that perhaps this is the effect of something in space. After all, changes in the sun and moon do affect the Earth. Do you think a magnetar energy burst from the other side of the galaxy would affect the Earth? What about a distant kilonova? Too far away, perhaps? Do you think that these things would have any effect on the Earth's magnetic field? How would it affect our sun? You know, one of the things CERN is known for is making some very sophisticated detectors. Do you think those detectors can only detect particles inside the collider? CERN has multiple uses, mainly because they are in the business of controlling high energy particles for several applications. This is the protodoom detector for detecting neutrinos. If you haven't seen it, go back and watch the presentation on Fermilab. They are going to pump neutrinos into the ground all the way to another facility into this detector. For what? To study the neutrino. That's it? Well, neutrinos are the first thing to hit us when something in space gives off an energy burst. They could use it for that, I guess. You see, the government is getting to the point where they can no longer control and hide information. The public is gaining access to information to where they don't need NASA or the military to tell them what type of particles are hitting the Earth. The only thing the government can do now is overwhelm and confuse us. Every other week there is a new asteroid announcement. Remember Oumuamua, the freak interstellar asteroid that zipped by us? Where are they all coming from? Did something explode in deep space? Is this debris from a very large celestial body? Or are all these asteroids just debris from the asteroid belt? And if so, what is causing this influx? What is causing this rise in volcanic activity? Not just volcanoes, earthquakes, and sinkholes are becoming a great concern. And the heat, my God, the heat. People have already died in heat waves this year. I can only imagine what the hurricane season is going to look like as we have an increase in the moisture in the air. That's not good. Remember, the the Atacama Desert is growing flowers now. Let me ask you all a personal question. How many of you are getting hot flashes often? I mean, you will be sitting there and all of a sudden you can feel your body just heat up rapidly to where you break a sweat for no apparent reason at all. There are certain triggers for this, one of them being radiation exposure. How many of you feel something funny going on with your heart? The point to all this, folks, is that some of these things that are presented as small concerns should be treated more seriously, as they are indicators of something much greater. A volcano erupting is a great concern for the people who live on it or next to it. It should be a great concern for the planet, as we are all going to be affected by these events, all of us, before we had time to think about preparing. But now it is time to start actually preparing. And that is going to take us into the next topic. Since speaking of Hawaii, my prayers do go out to those who have lost their homes, but fortunately, from what I understand, no one has yet to lose their life, and we can be thankful for that. I know places like Hawaii are absolutely beautiful, but at the same time, they can be absolutely deadly. People occupy these environments for years without problems, and I get it. That is just the way it is. How are they supposed to know that a volcano might do what a volcano does? With that said, let us keep our attention on these things that are happening around the world. They are significant, to say the least. They are indicators or precursors to something of much greater concern. So we should all consider taking these geographically separated events a bit more seriously, because what's happening really is just one large event. Some people are born into these environments, and some people in many countries around the world have very little choice in the matter when it comes to living there. Also, the land around many tropical volcanoes have rich soil. And of course, people want to live where they can grow plenty of food. And many people have taken and are taking that risk. But I would advise everyone to never build your home next to a sleeping dragon.